On this 7th wedding anniversary, Elaine spent the entire afternoon preparing dinner. She made Jason's favorite braised beef in red wine, simmering it slowly over low heat for 3 hours until the meat was tender and flavorful. The side dishes were asparagus salad and creamy mushroom soup, and the dessert was handmade tiramisu, the same one from their wedding 7 years ago. At the center of the dining table was a bouquet of white roses, with dew still clinging to the petals, glistening under the candlelight. "Mommy, when is Daddy coming back?" 5-year-old Hannah leaned on the table, gazing longingly at the array of dishes. Elaine glanced at her watch. It was already 7:30. Jason had said in the morning that he would be back on time, but he had clearly broken his promise again. She stroked her younger daughter's soft hair and said, "Daddy is busy with work, shall we wait a bit longer? You and your sister can have some snacks first?" "I want to wait for Daddy." Hannah stubbornly shook her head, while 7-year-old Sophie sensibly took out her drawing book and quietly began to doodle. As the clock hands slowly moved toward 9 o'clock, Elaine reheated the food for the 3rd time and finally coaxed her 2 daughters to eat something before going to bed. She sat alone at the table, her fingers unconsciously stroking a deep blue velvet box. Inside was a Hermès tie that had cost her 2 full months of her personal savings. At 11:15, the door lock finally turned. Elaine hurriedly stood up, tidied her hair and dress, and put on a smile as she walked toward the door. "Jason, you're back." Jason had his suit jacket draped over his arm, his tie loosened, carrying a faint scent of alcohol and a subtle perfume, not the one she used. Without even glancing at the carefully arranged table, he headed straight for the stairs, saying, "I'm tired, shower first." Elaine followed him, handing over the blue box. "Happy anniversary. I made your favorites. Put it there." Jason didn't look back. "We'll talk tomorrow." In the moment he turned, Elaine clearly saw a red lipstick mark on the inside of his white shirt collar and a few strands of golden long hair on his shoulder that weren't hers. Her heart sank abruptly. "Jason," her voice trembling, "on your shirt." Jason stopped, finally turning around. His gaze was cold and distant, as if looking at a stranger. "Elaine, let's talk." That night, their so-called talk was merely his unilateral declaration. His first love had returned to the country, they had rekindled their romance, and she was already 2 months pregnant. He wanted a divorce. "Sophie and Hannah stay with me," Elaine heard herself say, her voice surprisingly calm. "I don't want anything else." Jason seemed to have anticipated this, nodding readily. "The house and savings are yours, I'll pay child support. But they will always be my daughters." Elaine said nothing more. She turned and went upstairs, gently pushing open the door to her daughter's room. The 2 little angels were sleeping in each other's arms, with Sophie's arm protectively around her sister. Moonlight fell on their tender faces, their long eyelashes casting small shadows on their cheeks. She knelt by her daughter's bed, finally allowing the tears she had held back all evening to fall silently. 7 years of marriage had ended so lightly. But looking at her daughter's peaceful sleeping faces, she knew that from this night on, she must become an unbreakable mother. The divorce proceedings were handled unusually quickly, as if Jason couldn't wait to start his new life. Elaine stood in the living room of the once meticulously decorated mansion, watching the movers pack up the items belonging to her and her daughters one by one. Jason didn't even show up, sending only his lawyer to handle the matters. "Ms. Elaine, according to the agreement, you will receive ownership of this apartment and 3.6 million in savings." The lawyer with gold-rimmed glasses recited the document mechanically. "Mr. Jason will pay each of the 2 daughters 5,000 yuan per month in child support until they reach adulthood." Elaine nodded gently, her gaze sweeping over the family photo on the wall. It was taken last year during their vacation in the Maldives, with Sophie and Hannah in matching floral swimsuits, leaning on either side of their parents, their smiles dazzlingly bright. "One more thing," the lawyer pushed up his glasses. "Mr. Jason wishes to retain the children's surname and requests visitation rights at least once a month." "They will always be Jason's daughters. I have no objection to that," Elaine said calmly, "but visitation must be scheduled in advance and cannot interfere with the children's normal life and studies." The lawyer noted her requirements and added before leaving, Mr. Jason's mother asked me to inform you that she will visit her granddaughters next week. Elaine's fingers tightened slightly. Jason's mother had always disliked her, believing she was unworthy of the family's only son. After the divorce, her former mother-in-law's attitude had become even colder. 3 days later, Elaine moved with her 2 daughters into the small apartment she had bought before marriage. The 80-square-meter 2-bedroom unit seemed cramped compared to the previous over 200-square-meter mansion, but Sophie was delighted. "Mommy, I love it here," the 7-year-old girl declared after touring the place. "My bed is near the window, I can count stars at night." Hannah, holding her teddy bear, timidly asked, "When is Daddy coming to see us?" Elaine squatted down, looking her younger daughter in the eyes. "Daddy is very busy, but he promised to visit you this weekend. Now, let's decorate our new home beautifully together, okay?" As they were speaking, the doorbell rang. Elaine opened the door to see her best friend Kelly standing outside with bags in hand. "How can the first day of moving lack housewarming gifts?" Kelly bustled in, first giving each of the 2 little girls a plush toy, then magically pulling out various household items and snacks from the bags. After the children were drawn to their rooms by the new toys, Kelly pulled Elaine into the kitchen to whisper, "That bastard Jason, it's all over the company. He hooked up with his first love long ago, and only forced the divorce when her pregnancy became obvious." Elaine smiled bitterly, "Talking about this now is meaningless. I just want to take good care of the 2 children." Speaking of which, Kelly took out a document from her bag. "Do you remember the design company you used to work for? The director heard about your divorce and asked if you're interested in returning to work. Knowing you've been a full-time housewife for 7 years, you can start as an assistant." Elaine took the document, her fingers trembling slightly. It had been 7 years since becoming pregnant with Sophie. She had quit her job to stay home and support her husband and raise the children. Now, returning to the workplace while raising 2 children alone, could she really do it? I'll think about it." "What is there to think about?" Kelly said urgently. "The child support from Jason looks substantial, but with 2 children going to school, attending interest classes, and eventually college, everything costs money. You need your own career and income." As she spoke, Elaine's phone rang. The screen displayed Jason's mother, causing her heart to sink sharply. "Elaine," the former mother-in-law's deliberately gentle voice came from the other end, "I heard you've moved out. Give me the address, I'll visit my granddaughters tomorrow." "Auntie, we've just moved in, and it's still messy. Moreover, the children need time to adapt to the new environment." "What do you mean by that?" Jason's mother's voice immediately turned cold. "I'm their grandmother, don't I even have the right to see them? Jason said he gave you custody, but do you really think you can sever our family's bloodline?" Elaine took a deep breath. "That's not what I mean. I just hope to give the children a buffer period. Can we arrange a meeting next week?" After hanging up, Kelly looked at her worriedly. "Is the Jason family trying to take the children?" "Not for now," Elaine rubbed her temples, "but Jason's mother has always believed Sophie and Hannah are the family's bloodline and won't let go easily." That evening, after putting the 2 children to sleep, Elaine sat on the small balcony, gazing at the city's night view in a daze. 7 years ago, when she was pregnant with Sophie, Jason had held her and said, "I'll support you for life." 7 years later, the same man had unhesitatingly abandoned their mother and 2 daughters for a new love. Her phone vibrated. It was a text from Jason. "Tomorrow afternoon at 3, I'll bring Mom to see the children. Be ready." No discussion, only orders. Elaine smiled bitterly and turned off her phone. From now on, she must learn to say no, for herself and even more for her 2 daughters. On her first day back at work, Elaine got up at 5. She quietly prepared breakfast, laid out the clothes for the 2 children, and checked their school bags and lunchboxes once more. At exactly 7, she woke Sophie and Hannah, helping them wash and dress. "Mommy has to go to work today." She squatted down, looking her 2 daughters in the eyes. "After school, Aunt Lynn will pick you up, and you'll wait at her house until I come after work, okay?" Sophie nodded sensibly, but Hannah pouted. "Why can't Mommy pick us up like before?" Because mommy needs to work to earn money. Elaine kissed her younger daughter's forehead. I'll bring strawberry cake back for you tonight. After dropping the children at school, Elaine took the subway to the company. Having not worked for 7 years, the morning rush hour crowd made it hard for her to breathe. Standing in the crowded carriage, she suddenly recalled the days when a driver would take her out. The receptionist's gaze appraised her plain attire and slightly tense expression. Who are you looking for? I'm Elaine, reporting today. The director should. Oh. You're that full-time housewife who hasn't worked for 7 years? The receptionist realized, her tone carrying subtle disdain. The director is in a meeting, go to HR first for procedures. All day, Elaine struggled to adapt to the unfamiliar workplace environment. The computer software had been updated several generations, and she had to relearn even basic operations. The popular trends and design concepts discussed by colleagues left her bewildered. During lunch break, she hid in the restroom to message Kelly about the children and overheard 2 colleagues outside gossiping. Have you heard? The new Elaine is Jason's ex-wife. Really? The Jason who just married a young model? They say she hasn't worked for 7 years and is now out making a living after being abandoned, poor thing. Elaine bit her lip, waiting until it was quiet outside before emerging. Back at her desk, she found a pile of files added. Sister Elaine, young colleague Lily said with a smile, the director said these materials need to be organized today for the client tomorrow. You have experience, so it should be quick for you, right? Looking at the thick stack of files, Elaine forced a smile. I'll do my best. Quitting time arrived, and people in the office left one by one. Elaine was still buried in organizing the materials when her phone rang. It was Sophie's homeroom teacher. Mrs. Jason, Sophie got into a fight with a classmate today. Could you come to the school as soon as possible? Elaine's heart tightened sharply. A fight? Sophie, never. We'll discuss the details when you arrive. The parent of the child she hit is already here. Elaine hurriedly packed up, apologizing to Lily that she must leave. Lily pursed her lips. What about the materials the director needs tomorrow? I'll stay up all night to finish them, Elaine promised, grabbing her bag and rushing out. By the time she arrived at the school, it was already dark. Sophie sat alone in the corner of the office, her hair disheveled and eyes swollen. An arrogant woman was loudly complaining to the homeroom teacher. My son just told the truth. Children from single-parent families have issues, lacking discipline. Elaine took a deep breath and pushed the door open. I'm Sophie's mother. What happened? Upon seeing her, Sophie's tears immediately welled up. Mommy. It turned out that during recess, several boys surrounded Sophie singing A Child Without a Dad is Like a Weed. Sophie initially ignored them until they started saying your mom doesn't want you either, at which point she pounced on the leading boy. Mrs. Jason, your daughter's behavior is really... The teacher said awkwardly. I understand your position, Elaine calmly interrupted her, but may I ask, when those children insulted Sophie, did any teacher stop them? If not, shouldn't the school apologize for failing to prevent the bullying in time? The other parent exploded. What kind of attitude is this? Clearly, your daughter started the fight. I apologize for my daughter's overreaction, Elaine hugged the trembling Sophie, but your son and his friends also need to apologize for the verbal bullying. Being from a single-parent family is not the child's fault and should not be a reason for mockery. Finally, under the teacher's mediation, both sides reluctantly reconciled. As they left the school gate, Sophie whispered, Mommy, did I cause trouble for you? No, baby, Elaine hugged her daughter tightly, you weren't wrong to protect yourself, just next time, we can use a better way, okay? After picking up Hannah, the 3 hurried to Kelly's house. Just as they exited the subway station, the sky suddenly poured down rain. Elaine shielded her 2 daughters with her coat, but all 3 still got soaked like drowned rats. Back home, Elaine busied herself bathing and changing the children, completely forgetting she was still wet. Only after putting the 2 children to sleep did she notice Hannah's flushed face. Taking her temperature, it was 39.2 degrees. Baby, wake up, Elaine gently called her younger daughter, we need to go to the hospital. The pediatric emergency room at midnight was overcrowded. Elaine held the drowsy Hannah, with Sophie dozing against her side. By the time the nurse called their name, Elaine's back was aching. Bronchitis, needs nebulization treatment, the doctor said after examination, may need hospitalization for observation for 2 days. While handling the hospitalization procedures, Elaine suddenly heard a familiar voice. She looked up to see Jason embracing a clearly pregnant young woman entering the obstetrics area. The woman had shoulder-length blonde hair, the very one who left strands on his shirt. Jason saw her too, paused for a moment, then nodded coldly and turned away. "Is that Daddy?" Sophie suddenly asked. Elaine's throat tightened. "Yes, baby. But he's busy now. He doesn't want us anymore, right?" The 7-year-old girl's voice was eerily calm, "Because he has a new baby." Elaine squatted down, hugging her daughter tightly. "Listen, no matter what happens, Mommy will always be by your side. Always." Sophie buried her face in her shoulder, crying silently. Elaine looked toward the obstetrics direction, where Jason was gently supporting his new love's waist, his face bearing the familiar smile that once belonged only to her. At that moment, she finally understood that the past 7 years were truly over. From now on, it was just her and her 2 daughters depending on each other. A month passed, and Elaine gradually adapted to the dual rhythm of work and family. Every morning at 5, she got up to prepare breakfast and the children's lunch boxes. At 7, she dropped them at school, then rushed to the company by subway. After work, she picked up the children, made dinner, helped with homework, and continued unfinished work after they slept. Weekends were for cleaning, shopping for the next week's needs, and accompanying the children to interest classes. Exhausting, but fulfilling. That day during lunch break, the director suddenly called her to the office. "Elaine, I want you to participate in the new project for Xingyao Group." The director pushed over a proposal. "You had great talent in UI design before. I want to see if your insight remains sharp after 7 years." Elaine was flattered. I can try." "Don't underestimate yourself," the director said meaningfully. "You have more life experience than those fresh graduates, which is an asset for design." Back at her desk, Elaine opened the proposal and found it was for a high-end parent-child resort project. Thinking of the places she and the children had visited, she suddenly had inspiration. As she buried herself in sketching, her phone rang. It was Jason. "Tomorrow afternoon at 3, I'll pick up Sophie and Hannah. No greeting, direct order, take them to buy some clothes." Elaine gripped her phone. "Tomorrow Sophie has art class, Hannah has dance class." "Cancel them," Jason said impatiently. "I haven't seen my daughters for a month." "You should have. 3 o'clock, don't forget." The call ended. Elaine sighed and called the art and dance teachers to request leave. She knew refusing Jason would only bring more trouble, especially since Jason's mother had been frequently calling to care about her granddaughters lately. The next afternoon, Jason appeared punctually downstairs at the apartment. He drove a brand-new Porsche, with the blonde woman in the passenger seat. Now Elaine knew her name was Vivian, a somewhat famous model. "Daddy!" Hannah excitedly pounced on him, but Sophie hid behind her mother. Jason picked up his younger daughter and nodded to Elaine. "I'll bring them back at 6. "Wait," Elaine frowned. "This is my wife, Vivian," Jason said matter-of-factly. "We got married last week. The children will have to meet her sooner or later." Vivian, with her slightly protruding belly, got out of the car, smiling sweetly and extending her hand. "You must be Sister Elaine? I often hear Jason mention you. Sophie and Hannah, Auntie bought gifts for you." Sophie clung tightly to her mother's hand, while Hannah curiously looked at Vivian's belly. "Is there really a baby inside?" "Yes, your little brother." Vivian touched her belly. "You can play together in the future." Elaine suppressed her discomfort, squatted down to adjust Sophie's collar. "Go with Daddy, remember to be polite. Mommy will wait here at 6. Watching the Porsche drive away, Elaine's stomach twisted. Jason's remarriage was faster than she expected, and he already had a son. What did this mean for Sophie and Hannah? Would the Jason family want to fight for custody even more because of this? At exactly 6, the Porsche returned on time. Sophie got out sullenly, while Hannah excitedly waved her new doll. Daddy bought us so many clothes. Hannah boasted, and this doll costs 200 yuan. Jason took several shopping bags from the trunk. Next time, I'll take them to Disney. Bye. After the car drove away, Sophie suddenly threw the bag in her hand to the ground. I don't want their stuff. Daddy only cares about that auntie and the baby in her belly. He doesn't love us at all. Elaine pulled her daughter into her arms, letting her cry on her shoulder. Back home, as Hannah excitedly showed off the new clothes, Sophie locked herself in her room. Why is sister angry? Hannah asked, puzzled. Because she misses the old daddy, Elaine explained softly. Baby, you need to understand your sister's feelings. That evening, after putting Hannah to sleep, Elaine gently pushed open Sophie's door. The girl was lying on her bed with a sketchbook open in front of her. Can I see it? Elaine asked, sitting down. Sophie hesitated for a moment, then pushed the book over. On the paper were 4 people, Jason, Vivian, and a baby boy standing together, while she, Hannah, and Mom stood far away, separated by a deep chasm. Elaine's heart ached as if gripped. She flipped to the previous page and saw a sunny painting, her and her 2 daughters picnicking on the grass, with a rainbow sky. I like this one, she said softly. Sophie leaned against her. Teacher Mason says I have talent. He says I can enter next month's children's art competition. Teacher Mason? The new art teacher. He says my paintings have real emotion. Sophie rarely smiled. Mommy, I want to learn painting. Okay, we'll find a way, Elaine promised, though she knew art classes were expensive. The next day, after dropping the children at school, Elaine specifically sought out Teacher Mason. Mason was a man in his early 30s, wearing black-framed glasses, speaking gently and politely. Sophie has great talent, he said sincerely. Her artwork is technically raw, but the emotional expression is very pure. The competition theme is my home. I believe she can create moving works. Elaine nodded gratefully. Thank you for your encouragement. She has been through a lot lately. I can tell, Mason said understandingly. Art is sometimes the best therapy. If you agree, I'm willing to provide extra tutoring for her to prepare for the competition. On the subway home, Elaine received a text from the director. Xingyao Group appreciates your draft. They want you to present in person next week. Life seemed to be heading in a positive direction. However, when picking up Hannah after school, a discordant note shattered this illusion. Mrs. Jason, Hannah's homeroom teacher, called her. Today Hannah had a dispute with a classmate because the other said she has no dad who wants her. Elaine closed her eyes. Same plot, different child. She squatted down, looking at the sullen Hannah. What happened, baby? Hannah threw herself into her arms crying. I said I have a daddy. But Xiaochang said daddy doesn't want us because he has a new baby. I'm not lying, Mommy, I really have a daddy. Elaine hugged her daughter tightly, feeling the small body trembling in her arms. Surrounding parents cast sympathetic or curious glances, and she suddenly felt a surge of anger. Julia, she looked directly into the teacher's eyes. May I ask how your school handles campus bullying? This is already the 2nd time my child has faced the same issue. The teacher looked troubled. We will educate the children to get along friendly, but family situations are facts after all. Being a single-parent family is not a shame. Elaine raised her voice slightly. My children should not be mocked because of their parents' marital status. If the school cannot protect them, I will consider transferring. Other parents began whispering. Elaine picked up Hannah and strode away, her heart filled with both anger and sorrow. She knew this was just the beginning. In this seemingly open society, single mothers and their children still faced countless invisible biases and harms. The proposal meeting for Xingyao Group proceeded as scheduled. Elaine stood at the front of the conference room, facing over a dozen executives, presenting her design scheme. 7 years as a housewife had not eroded her professional skills. On the contrary, her experience as a mother gave her unique insights into parent-child interaction details. Our design concept is rediscovering the joy of connection. She clicked the remote, and a warm illustration appeared on the screen. Modern families rely too much on electronic devices, while every detail of this resort encourages genuine parent-child interactions. She showcased treehouse beds that could be built together in the rooms, child-designed cooking stations in the kitchen, and outdoor adventure activities requiring parent-child cooperation to complete challenges. Every idea stemmed from her daily interactions with her children. After the speech, Xingyao's chairman led the applause. "Ms. Elaine, your scheme has the most warmth. This is exactly what we want, not just luxurious facilities, but spaces for emotional connections." The director's face showed a satisfied smile. On the way back to the company, she patted Elaine's shoulder. "Mr. Zhang said this project will be mainly under your responsibility. Work hard, promotion and raise are no issue." Elaine felt a long-lost sense of professional achievement. After work, she took a detour to buy a small cake, wanting to share the good news with the children. Just arriving at the door, she heard Sophie's excited voice, "Mommy, I won a prize." On the living room wall was a certificate, "First prize in children's art competition, Sophie my home." The painting showed 3 female figures from behind, holding hands on a mountaintop watching the sunrise, with warm and bright colors. "Teacher Mason took me to receive the award." Sophie's eyes sparkled. "The judges said my painting makes people feel the power of love." Elaine hugged her daughter tightly. "That's amazing. I knew you were the best." She turned to Hannah, who was eating cake. "How was kindergarten today?" Hannah licked the cream, mumbling. "Xiao Chang said again that Daddy doesn't want me, but I told him my sister won a prize. My daddy will come to the award ceremony." Elaine's smile froze. Sophie's award ceremony was next week, but she hadn't told Jason at all. "Baby, Daddy might be very busy." "No, he said he would come." Hannah insisted. "He promised last time." That evening, after much hesitation, Elaine texted Jason about Sophie's award and the ceremony time. He replied with one word, "Busy." On the day of the award ceremony, the sun was shining. Sophie wore the new dress Elaine bought, nervously clutching the certificate. Hannah kept looking around. "Has Daddy come?" The auditorium was filled with award-winning children and parents. Teacher Mason came over, kindly asking, "Sophie's dad didn't come?" "He is busy with work." Elaine forced a smile. "It's okay, Mommy being here is the most important," Mason comforted, then lowered his voice. "The gentleman in the back row is very interested in Sophie's painting. He's a well-known art investor and wants to talk to you." Elaine turned back and saw a middle-aged man in casual suit nodding to her. After the awards, this Mr. Adrian approached proactively. "Ms. Elaine, your daughter has great talent." His voice was gentle yet strong. "That painting is technically immature, but the emotional expression is very pure. I see resilience, hope, and unconditional love." Elaine was somewhat surprised. "You can see so much from a child's painting?" "Art is my profession." Adrian handed her a business card. "I have an art education center in the east of the city. If you agree, I'm willing to provide Sophie with free professional guidance. Such talent shouldn't be wasted." Elaine became alert. "Why are you so kind to us?" Adrian said frankly, "On one hand, I truly appreciate Sophie's talent. On the other," he paused, "my sister was also a single mother, and I understand the challenges you face. This is just an uncle wanting to help a talented child." Sophie shyly hid behind her mother, but her eyes kept staring at the album in Adrian's hand. It was a collection of student works from his art center. "Thank you for your kindness," Elaine finally said. "We need to think about it." On the way home, Hannah was sullen. "Daddy lied. He said he would come." Sophie silently held her mother's hand and suddenly said, "It's okay, having Mommy is enough." 3 days later, Elaine saw in the newspaper's social section Jason and Vivian hosting a grand full-month banquet for their newborn. In the photo, Jason held the swaddled son, smiling broadly. Jason's mother stood beside, full of pride. The report specifically mentioned birth of the Jason family enterprise heir, without a word about the 2 daughters from Jason's previous marriage. That night, Sophie found her mother hiding in the bathroom crying secretly. She didn't knock but returned to her room and drew a new painting, a woman holding a huge umbrella in the rain, with two little girls safe underneath. The Xingyao project progressed smoothly, and Elaine's design received unanimous praise from the client. The director publicly praised her at the monthly meeting and announced her promotion to project leader with a 30% salary increase. Colleagues congratulated her one after another, even Lily, who had once mocked her, had to concede. "Sister Elaine, how did you do it?" During lunch break, a young colleague asked curiously, "Haven't worked for 7 years, yet so impressive upon return." Elaine stirred her coffee, smiling, "Perhaps it's exactly because of those 7 years. I understand better than you what families truly need." After work, she specifically went to the mall to buy the advanced art supplies Sophie had been longing for and a talking doll for Hannah. With improved finances, she could finally give the children more of what they deserved. Just exiting the mall, her phone rang. It was Adrian. "Ms. Elaine, pardon the interruption," his voice was gentle and polite, "our center has a parent-child art event next week. I'd like to invite you and Sophie. Many talented children and parents will attend. It's a great opportunity for exchange." Elaine hesitated. "Thank you for the invitation, but weekends I usually spend with both daughters." "Hannah can come too," Adrian said immediately. "We have activities for all ages. In fact..." He paused. "I noticed Sophie hasn't returned to art class since the last exhibition. Teacher Mason is worried about her." Elaine's heart tightened. Since Jason missed the award ceremony, Sophie hadn't said anything, but she painted noticeably less. And Hannah had become more silent at kindergarten lately, with the teacher reporting she often hid in corners talking to herself. "Okay, we'll attend," she finally decided. "Thank you for your concern." On Saturday morning, Elaine brought her 2 daughters to Adrian's art center. Sophie was immediately attracted by the various artworks on the walls upon entering, while Hannah took interest in the clay in the pottery room. "Let me introduce," Adrian came with an elegant lady. "This is my sister Michelle, a child psychology expert. She's here specially to host the parent-child activity today." Michelle smiled warmly. "Ms. Elaine, I've heard much about you. I've seen your daughter's paintings, they're very touching." She squatted down to Hannah's level. "Little one, want to play with clay? There are many colors to choose from over there." To Elaine's surprise, the usually shy Hannah took Michelle's hand. After the activity started, through the glass window, she saw her younger daughter, guided by Michelle, molding a small house with clay, inside 3 little figures, obviously her sister, and mom. "She's expressing her inner world through art," Adrian explained softly. "My sister says Hannah may have experienced some emotional distress lately." Elaine's eyes welled up. "Their dad remarried and has a son now. The children don't say it, but..." "I understand." Adrian handed her a cup of tea. "My brother-in-law abandoned her and their 3-month-old nephew for a younger woman back then. During that time, I witnessed firsthand how many challenges a single mother faces." At the end of the activity, Hannah excitedly showed her clay sculpture, while Sophie picked up the brush again and painted a brightly colored garden scene. Michelle privately told Elaine that both children were healthy and smart, just needing more sense of security and channels to express emotions. "If you don't mind, I can see them regularly," Michelle suggested. "Not formal therapy, just playing games and doing crafts together." Elaine gratefully accepted the proposal. On the way home, Sophie suddenly asked, "Mommy, does Uncle Adrian like you?" "What?" Elaine almost choked on her saliva. "Why do you think that?" "The way he looks at you is like how Teacher Mason looks at Julia," Sophie said like a little adult, "and he's especially nice to me, definitely to please you." Elaine was amused and exasperated. "Little imp. Uncle Adrian just appreciates your talent." However, that evening, Adrian did send a message beyond art exchange. "Ms. Elaine, may I have the honor of inviting you for coffee alone? You're an admirable woman, I'd like to know you better." Elaine stared at the phone screen, her heart racing. Divorced for over half a year, she had never considered starting a new relationship. But undeniably, Adrian's maturity, steadiness, and empathy attracted her. As she hesitated on how to reply, another message came in from Jason. "Mom will pick up the children tomorrow. Bring them back to the old house for dinner." The cold, hard tone contrasted sharply with Adrian's gentle invitation. Elaine sighed and replied, "Tomorrow Sophie has art class, Hannah has a dance performance. Can we change to another day?" Jason replied almost instantly, "No. Mom has already arranged it. 3 p.m. Elaine gripped her phone. Every time she felt life was improving, the Jason family would suddenly appear, disrupting everything. She ultimately didn't reply to Adrian but called Kelly. "What's the Jason family up to?" Kelly said indignantly, usually ignoring the children, now suddenly wanting to take them. "What I'm worried about is," Elaine lowered her voice, "Jason's mother has always been dissatisfied with me having custody. Now that Jason has a son, will they suddenly want the two granddaughters back?" "You need to keep evidence," Kelly suggested. "Every time they see the children, record the time, place, and situation. In case of a custody lawsuit in the future, these are important materials." The next afternoon, the Jason family's driver appeared punctually downstairs. Jason's mother came personally, dressed in an elaborate cheongsam, expressionlessly waiting for the children to get in the car. "Grandma." Hannah ran over happily, while Sophie hesitated and glanced at her mother. "Go, have fun," Elaine forced a smile. "Remember to return before 6, school tomorrow." Jason's mother coldly glanced at her. "My own granddaughters, what's wrong with staying longer? Jason will bring them back tonight." "But..." "What, afraid we'll take the children?" Jason's mother sneered. "Rest assured, the Jason family doesn't lack heirs. But girls need proper upbringing, not to learn petty ways from you." Watching the Mercedes drive away, Elaine's stomach twisted. She suddenly decided to follow to the Jason family old house, just in case. The Jason family old house was in a suburban villa area with strict security. Elaine's taxi was stopped at the gate, so she got out and walked. Just nearing the main house, she heard laughter from the garden. Through the fence gaps, she saw the entire Jason family present: Jason, Vivian holding the newborn, Jason's father, Jason's mother, and several relatives. Hannah sat on Jason's mother's lap eating cake, while Sophie stood alone aside. "Sophie, Jason's mother's voice came clearly, "You're the big sister now, be sensible. Come to grandma's more on weekends, learn etiquette. Conditions at your mom's are poor, don't ruin your future." "I like being with mommy," Sophie said softly but firmly. "Silly child," Jason's mother dismissed, "you're Jason's daughter, you'll return to the Jason family eventually. Your dad has a son now, so you sisters need to strive harder, or you'll have no share in the family property later." Elaine trembled all over. This was the true face of the Jason family. They didn't care about Sophie and Hannah's happiness, just treating them as pawns in property disputes. She was about to rush in when she saw Sophie run to Hannah, taking her sister's hand. "We want to go home. Mommy is waiting." Jason frowned. "You've just arrived and want to leave?" "Mommy said return before 6, Sophie insisted. "We have to listen to mommy." Jason's mother's face darkened. "Did your mother teach you to be disobedient? In the Jason family, follow Jason family rules." Hannah was scared and cried out, "I want mommy." The scene was chaotic. Elaine could no longer hold back, pushed open the garden door, and walked in. "I'm here to pick up the children." Everyone was stunned. Jason reacted first. "How did you get in?" "Walked in," Elaine said calmly, walking toward her two daughters. "Sophie, Hannah, let's go home." Jason's mother stood up abruptly. "Stop. These are my Jason family's granddaughters, who are you to take them just like that?" "Because I'm their mother." Elaine looked directly into Jason's mother's eyes. "By the custody rights granted by law. If you want to see the children, welcome to discuss times in advance. But forcibly taking them like today and instilling hateful ideas, I will never allow it." Jason's face was grim. "Elaine, don't go too far. Custody can be changed." "Then see you in court." Elaine held one daughter in each hand, turned and left. "The children are not objects, not toys you want and take, or discard at will." On the taxi home, Hannah was still sobbing, while Sophie tightly hugged her mother's arm. Elaine kissed her two daughters' foreheads, her heart filled with both anger and determination. She knew the real war had just begun. The Jason family's lawyer's letter arrived a week later. Elaine's fingers trembled as she opened the envelope. Inside was a formal custody lawsuit document. The Jason family, citing providing a superior growth environment, demanded a change in Sophie and Hannah's custody. The complaint listed a series of evidence: her small apartment, busy work leading to inadequate child care, Sophie's school fight record. How can they do this? Kelly slammed the table angrily. Jason voluntarily gave up custody initially, now regretting? Elaine forced herself to calm down, find a lawyer, the best family lawyer. However, after consulting several lawyers, her heart sank to the bottom. The Jason family had hired the city's most famous divorce lawyer with an extremely high win rate. Her savings couldn't afford equivalent defense. Ms. Elaine, one lawyer frankly told her, with the Jason family's wealth and connections, this case is hard to win. Your best strategy is to fight for joint custody. In despair, Adrian, somehow hearing the news, called, I have a college classmate who's a family lawyer specializing in custody cases. If you don't mind, I'd like to introduce you. The next day, Elaine met lawyer Chloe, a woman in her early 40s with sharp eyes. I've read the complaint. Chloe was direct. The Jason family's accusations are cunning but not impregnable. The key is proving the children are happier living with you, not just comparing material conditions. She proposed a series of strategies: collect evidence of the children's good school performance, prove the Jason family's true motives for suddenly fighting for custody, demonstrate Elaine's competence as a mother. Most importantly, Chloe emphasized, if the children are old enough, the judge will consider their wishes. Sophie is already 8, her opinion is crucial. Leaving the law firm, Adrian waited downstairs. How did the talk go? Lawyer Ching is very professional, Elaine said tiredly, but the fees? She agreed to installment payments and gave a friendship price. Adrian paused. Ms. Elaine, I know it's inappropriate now, but I want to confess, I do have feelings for you. But regardless of your response, I'll help you through this fully. Elaine's eyes welled up. Why? We haven't known each other long. Because I see your love for your daughters, his gaze sincere, and because I believe some battles in this world are worth fighting together. Elaine didn't respond immediately but tacitly allowed him to drive her home. On the way, Adrian spoke of how his divorced sister raised her child alone, and now the nephew had entered a prestigious school. Children from single-parent families can also excel. The key is love and companionship. His words gave Elaine immense comfort. However, the litigation pressure inevitably affected the children. Sophie became increasingly reclusive at school, once scratching a classmate's face in a conflict. Hannah started having nightmares, waking crying at night saying she dreamed of being taken by grandma and never seeing mommy again. The worst was the Jason family exploiting visitation rights. After each meeting, the two children would be emotionally down for days. Hannah once even asked, Mommy, if I agree to live with Daddy, won't you be so tired? Elaine's heart felt like it was being cut, hugging her younger daughter tightly. Baby, no matter how tired Mommy is, I won't give you up. This isn't something you need to worry about. The night before the court hearing, Elaine organized all materials and checked the children's uniforms and bags. As she prepared to rest, Sophie quietly came in. Mommy, what should I say to the judge tomorrow? The girl's eyes shone in the dark. Elaine pulled her to sit beside. Just tell the truth. Who do you want to live with? Why? I want to be with Mommy, Sophie said without hesitation, because Mommy really loves us. Daddy and Grandma only love the little brother and the new auntie. Elaine kissed her daughter's forehead. The judge will listen to you. Go sleep now, tomorrow is important. The next day, the courtroom atmosphere was tense. The Jason family attended in full, suited and imposing. On Elaine's side, only Kelly and Adrian accompanied her. The Jason family lawyer was aggressive, listing defects like Elaine's small apartment, long work hours, unstable income, claiming the Jason family could provide top educational resources and a complete family environment. When it was Chloe's turn to defend, she presented Elaine's work promotion records, the children's excellent school performance, except for recent isolated incidents due to stress, and the fact that Jason had voluntarily given up custody initially. Most crucially, Chloe emphasized, Mr. Jason has seen the children only 4 times in the past 8 months, 2 of which he was late and left early. Does this seem like a father truly concerned for his children's well-being? The judge turned to Jason. Defense, what is your explanation? Jason stammered, I'm busy with work, and your new wife just gave birth to a son, with no time for the daughters from the previous marriage, right? Chloe sharply pursued. As the debate intensified, the judge suddenly said, I want to hear the child's opinion. Is Sophie present? Sophie was brought into the court. Facing the serious environment, the 8-year-old girl trembled nervously, but when the judge gently asked who she wanted to live with, she lifted her head and said clearly, I want to be with Mommy. Daddy has a new family, they only like the little brother. But Mommy only has me and my sister, the 3 of us will never separate. The Jason family lawyer immediately rebutted, the child has been brainwashed by the mother. I have not. Sophie suddenly said loudly, Grandma said I'm from the Jason family and must go back to fight for property, or all Daddy's money will go to the brother. But I don't want money, I just want Mommy. The courtroom erupted. The judge banged the gavel for order, then looked at the silent Hannah, little girl, what about you? Who do you want to live with? 5-year-old Hannah suddenly broke free from Elaine's hand, ran to the judge's bench, hugged the judge's leg and cried, I want Mommy. Don't give me to Grandma, I'm scared. The scene was chaotic for a moment. The judge announced a recess and would pronounce judgment another day. Leaving the courtroom, Jason's mother glared viciously at Elaine, you taught the children to act. The Jason family won't give up. Elaine responded calmly, the children spoke from their hearts. Please respect their feelings. That evening, after putting the frightened children to sleep, Elaine collapsed exhausted on the sofa. Adrian called, you did great today. The judge was clearly moved by the children. Hope so, Elaine's voice was hoarse, I can't lose them again. You won't, Adrian said firmly, no matter the outcome, remember, you're not alone. 3 days later, the judgment came. The judge dismissed the Jason family's lawsuit, maintaining the original custody arrangement but granting the Jason family 2 visitations per month. The court believes, the judge wrote in the decision, material conditions are not the sole measure of parental ability. The deep emotional bonds established between the children and their mother, as well as their clearly expressed wishes, are important factors that cannot be ignored. Elaine held the judgment, sobbing uncontrollably. Kelly and Adrian smiled consolingly beside her. The 2 children vaguely realized they would never be forced to leave Mommy again. After the loss, the Jason family's attitude turned sharply. Jason canceled that month's visitation, and his mother no longer called to care about the granddaughters. Worse, Jason stopped paying child support, claiming to reassess financial arrangements. This is revenge, Kelly said angrily, just because they lost the case. Elaine was unusually calm, expected. From now on, we rely on ourselves. She worked even harder, taking on more projects. The success of the Xingya resort made her somewhat famous in the industry, with clients starting to approach her. The director hinted that by year-end, she could be promoted to creative deputy director. Adrian became a regular during this difficult period. Every Friday night, he would bring ingredients to cook, tutor Sophie in painting after dinner, and play dolls with Hannah. Gradually, the 2 children started calling him Uncle Adrian, and Hannah even accidentally called him Dadju once, surprising and delighting everyone. On a rainy night, as Adrian drove Elaine home, he suddenly stopped at the door. Elaine, he called her by name for the first time, I know it's not a good time, but I must say it. I've fallen in love with you, and with Sophie and Hannah. If you're willing, I want to become your family. Elaine's eyes welled up, Mingyuan, I can't. The Jason family just lost, if I start a new relationship now, they'll make a big deal of it, even appeal again. I can't risk it. I understand, Adrian gently held her hand, I'll wait. No matter how long. Just as life seemed on track, Sophie had trouble at school again. Elaine was urgently called to the principal's office, seeing her daughter tear-streaked, clothes torn, opposite a haughty boy and his angry mother. "Sophie hit my son," the woman accused shrilly. "Look what she did to my baby's face." The principal explained awkwardly. According to other classmates, Alex first mocked Sophie that Daddy doesn't want her, and said her mom seduces other men. Elaine trembled all over. These words were clearly taught by adults, likely originating from the Jason family. "Mrs. Zhang," she suppressed her anger, "may I ask where your son heard such words?" The other's eyes flickered. "Kids say nonsense. But your daughter hitting is a fact. I want her to apologize publicly." "I refuse," Elaine said resolutely. "If anyone, adult or child, insults me and my family, we have the right to defend our dignity. If the school insists on Sophie apologizing, I'll consider legal means." Finally, under school mediation, both sides reluctantly reconciled. But on the way home, Sophie suddenly said, "Mommy, it was Grandma. Last time Daddy took us to eat, Grandma and Aunt said bad things about you and Uncle Adrian. I heard it all." Elaine squatted down, looking into her daughter's eyes. "Baby, adults can be complicated sometimes. But remember, no matter what others say, Mommy loves you and your sister. That will never change." "I know," Sophie leaned on her shoulder. "I love you too, Mommy. More than the whole world." That night, Elaine tossed and turned. She began doubting her decisions. Should she completely cut ties with the Jason family for the children's safety? But the legally mandated visitation prevented that. The next day, an unexpected call broke the stalemate. "Jason. I need to see you," his voice unusually weary. "Talk alone." In the coffee shop, Elaine hardly recognized her ex-husband. The once-spirited Jason now had deep eye bags, wrinkled suit, fingers tapping the table non-stop. "Vivian took our son back to America," he said straight. "She couldn't stand my mom's interference, nor my current financial situation." Elaine raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "Company in crisis," Jason smiled bitterly. "New project failed, capital chain broken. Before leaving, Vivian transferred most of my liquid assets." He looked up, eyes complex. "I regret it, Elaine. Giving up you and the children was the biggest mistake of my life." Elaine sneered. "So now down and out, remembering your ex-wife and daughters?" "No, I just..." Jason ruffled his hair. "I want to make up. Be better to Sophie and Hannah. I'll handle my mom, she won't interfere anymore." "Too late, Jason," Elaine said calmly. "We've started a new life. If you really want to make up, pay child support on time and respect my and the children's choices." Jason was silent for a long time, finally nodding. "I understand. About Adrian, he's a good man. Better than me." After this talk, the Jason family's attitude softened noticeably. Visitations became regular but no longer forced, and Jason's mother stopped instilling hateful ideas. Hannah once returned from a visit saying, "Grandma braided my hair and said I look like Mommy when she was little." Elaine didn't know what Jason said to his family, but she was grateful for this rare peace. Time flew like water. 3 years passed in a blink. Elaine was promoted to director at the design company, with income sufficient for a comfortable life for the children. Sophie excelled at Adrian's art center, her works even in international children's art exhibitions. Hannah emerged from her psychological shadow, becoming one of the liveliest girls in class. And Adrian, as promised, waited patiently. Until Sophie's 12th birthday, when she secretly told her mother, "Marry Uncle Adrian, I want to formally call him Dad." On a sunny weekend, Elaine finally accepted Adrian's proposal. The wedding was simple, with only close friends and family. Sophie and Hannah wore little dresses, standing proudly beside their mother. When the pastor announced, "You may kiss the bride," Hannah suddenly shouted, "I want to kiss the groom dad too," making everyone laugh. After marriage, they moved into Adrian's house, spacious enough for 4 children, including Adrian's sister's son, to run freely. Elaine kept her small apartment, converting it into a studio, occasionally going there alone to paint or think. Jason's company barely survived but was no longer as glorious. He remarried and divorced again, now living alone. Occasionally, he would invite the two daughters to dinner, but Sophie and Hannah had built their own lives and friend circles, polite but distant toward him. Another ordinary Sunday morning, sunlight streamed through the sheer curtains into the kitchen. Elaine stood at the counter frying eggs, footsteps behind. It was Adrian, naturally taking the spatula from her hand, lightly kissing her cheek. You sleep more. No, she shook her head smiling. Sophie has the art competition finals today, Hannah has a dance performance, need to prepare early. As they spoke, the two girls ran into the kitchen one after another. 15-year-old Sophie had grown graceful, carrying her drawing board like a young Elaine. 12-year-old Hannah inherited her father's lively personality, chattering all day like a happy little bird. Mom. Is my competition work framed? Sophie rummaged in the fridge. Mommy. The sequin on my dance costume fell off. Hannah waved a shiny decoration yelling. Elaine and Adrian exchanged smiles, dividing to solve the two daughters' emergencies. Such mornings, which past Elaine would see as disasters, now became her most cherished routine. At the breakfast table, Hannah suddenly asked, "Will Daddy come to see my performance today?" She meant Jason. He said he'll try. Elaine passed the milk, but you know he's busy with work. It's okay, Hannah bit into her toast nonchalantly. Dad, you promised to record it, right? Adrian nodded smiling. Over the years, he never tried to replace Jason's position, but the children naturally saw him as their real father. After sending the children out, Elaine cleaned the table alone. Her phone rang, Jason's text, sudden business trip, can't make Hannah's performance. Buy her a bouquet for me. She sighed and replied, okay, safe travels. Putting down the phone, Elaine looked at the sycamore tree outside the window. The abandoned, desperate, helpless full-time housewife from 10 years ago had transformed into a competent professional woman and mother. She lost a marriage but found her true self and a healthier love. In the evening, the whole family gathered at Sophie's competition award ceremony. When the host announced Gold Award winner, Sophie Mother's Power, Elaine's eyes filled with hot tears. The painting was her own profile, working at the computer, with two little girls sleeping peacefully beside, stars twinkling outside the window. This painting is dedicated to my mom, Sophie said on the podium. She taught me that true power comes from love and persistence. On the way home, Hannah slept in the back seat. Sophie excitedly discussed her university plans for art design. Adrian held the steering wheel with one hand, tightly gripping Elaine's with the other. Tired? He asked softly. Elaine shook her head, smiling at the passing night view outside the window. On that rainy night 10 years ago, she thought her life was over. Now she understood it was just the start of a new journey.